Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. Hope you're all enjoying the spring. I see that Nick has brought spring to us here in our graphics. We don't really know what that looks like in Maine yet, but we're working on it. So, the usual housekeeping things. Please like and follow the Leather Elves on Facebook. That way, you find out when we go live, if we have a pop up sale. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hi Redbird is also has a YouTube channel, and you can like and follow them on Facebook. So we've got a lot. I have a lot going on. Craziness. The Rockstar Rescue Tour starting next week. We'll be doing rescue and sponsor spotlights. So that's stay tuned for that. You can follow the Rockstar page. It's Rockstar Rescue Tour on Facebook. We'll also share it on my page and the Leather Elves page, and Bird Gardens of Naples. There's Jack. We've got Jody's got the legislative awareness workshop this weekend in Tacoma. She is joined by Georgia Hayes from AFA, and I am getting feedback. I don't know where it's coming from.
I don't either. I'll work on it.
Okay, all right, no worries. And then we've got, I will be in Virginia at Peninsula Cage Bird Society doing a legislative awareness workshop. We'll be doing it twice that day, one during the day, one after the march, so that people who are involved in the march can attend. Let's see what else. I think that's all that's going on right now, maybe. Oh, and I'll tomorrow I'll be in New Hampshire at Birds of a Feather Agricultural Society's their spring bird mart, and I will be presenting on welfare and enrichment and the usual. So it's crazy busy. But Jack, I was going to write down a bio for you, Jack, and then I went, no, I'm just going to come up with adjectives. So, or
Uh-oh.
no, they're good adjectives. So if somebody said to me, "Who's Jack Pine?" I'd say he's been a zookeeper, a trainer, parrot festival coordinator, owner of High Redbird, and a really good friend. And so I and there when things get crazy. So what did I leave out?
I think the really fun thing is, and I'm going to then say some things that might make you retract some of those statements.
Ready.
No, the really fun thing is when you are a zookeeper, when you're in that role, responsible for animals, caring for them, cleaning up after them, doing everything, you kind of have to be all of those things. You have to know about training, know about enrichment, know about guest engagement, know about general animal husbandry. You have to be warm and engaging and welcoming to other people. And usually, when there is animal feces somewhere on you, um, I think that just sort of lumps everything in. Although I know you were saying earlier that y'all aren't really celebrating springtime in Maine yet. Um, we've been in the 80s. I have all of my outdoor reptiles outside. Like all of my ginger and bananas have started sprouting for the spring. We're
So
tropical here.
I was talking to a friend who's lived in Maine her whole life, and I said to her, I really want to do some raised beds, and I'm going to do a teepee out of runner beans. And I said, so when do I start them? You've lived here all your life. She goes, oh, don't even start until May. What? Yeah. So I don't even have to worry. That's not even on my to-do list right now. So, um, I don't know. Okay, so Eva just asked if we could post something on the page about the legislative workshop in Virginia. Eva, I'll put that same post that Nick put up. I will put that on my page, so that, and anybody's welcome to come to that. It's not just avian, it's focused on avian, but we can definitely do that. So, all right, while you're doing all those things, Jack, um, training. And, training for husbandry. I feel like we've done it 1,000 times, but it's that important.
Well, and the reason we keep doing it, and I'm sorry, I just had like a full flashback that was simultaneously like traumatic and a whole lot of fun. This past year at Parrot Festival, uh, we were not having wonderful spring weather in Houston. We were having snowstorm and ice, which is not something we can do down here in Texas. The one de-icing truck we have is very, very busy if we get any kind of ice or snow. So Parrot Festival, we did have people who were unable to attend. We had speakers who were unable to attend. So at the last minute, Robin and I put together I kind of thought of it as Jack and Robin's greatest hits, a training workshop. And yeah, because when you're putting together a 3-day conference with speakers from all over the country, attendees from all over the country, what why wouldn't you want to also be like, okay, let's plan a 3-hour training workshop
Well,
the
and it
day
was it
before?
would have been fine, and that's the thing is I think both of us have done these kind of things enough times that we were able to pull together a greatest hits and make it look, if from the front of the house it looked like, oh yeah, it's been done for weeks, and meanwhile it was done the night before. But
I
training.
technically, technically it had been done for years because we pulled outlines and from sessions we had done before.
Which kind of circles right back around to training and why it's important and why
Yeah.
we've got to have a plan. And even when you don't have a specific plan, if you've got you can pull it together. So training for husbandry, we a lot of people like, oh, I want to trick train, I want to do this, I want to do that. Where, and you've done both, I've done both. How do we decide we're going to do husbandry training versus trick training?
And that's one of those things where it completely comes down to approach. And I would even argue that the idea of like training both kind of does them a disservice almost, because it's not like things are very easily categorized, like, oh, that's a trick, or oh, this is for husbandry. Things definitely fall in both categories.
Mhm.
Any training that you are doing, in my opinion, helps all of your training. If your animal is learning how cues work, learning how the reinforcement works, building that reinforcement history with you, building that relationship with you, then when you want to do more difficult behaviors, your animal's going to be more likely to do them. You're going to have a better handle on training, so you're going to be a better trainer. And when I've done things with my dog, where I've done educational shows with him, which, oh God, he's been doing it so long, he's actually pretty much retired at this point. But no, we would talk about how, oh, Gunner, give me a hug. He jumps up, he gives me a little hug. All the kids are like, oh my God, that's adorable. And I'm like, okay, but this is, husbandry training. I can also have him do that. Now he's closer to me. He's voluntarily coming up to me. I can look inside his ears, look at his eyes, get a really good look at him. So now this is about taking care of him, not just a fun trick, but it's both.
Right. And that's, my favorite one. And did you see the love note from Nick about making sure your second device was turned down, the volume on your second device?
I didn't, but I already did it.
Okay.
It's
Uh,
muted.
I don't know. Anyway,
Was it
but
me?
one of my favorite behaviors is wings up with birds, because when you do wings up, then you've got, right there. Now you're able to look at things. You're able to do a body condition score by a visual one, and it looks really cool when you do wings up. So I don't know, but there's a lot of different. There is crossover. So improved welfare, safety. I mean, we're talking about our animals are safer when we do training for husbandry because there's not, I think sometimes when we get frustrated or if there's an emergency and we haven't trained for husbandry, you can become not you, but people can become a little bit heavy-handed because it's that emergency. I'm in a panic. If I haven't trained and planned, it can get out of hand quickly.
Right. I think we always need to take a look at it. I actually did a session for the American Federation of Aviculture on, it was called Feather Touch Aviculture. It was basically utilizing training to do the things that you want to do. Um, I, I think working with animals, one of the things I've seen again and again is that ability to give animals a choice for them to have an understanding of what's going on, using the least amount of force needed, uh,
Mm.
is going to be really, really important for your animal's well-being. It's going to be important for you building a relationship with that animal. Now, on the same token, because I did actually get into, I wouldn't say an argument, but a spirited disagreement with another trainer at a workshop, because yes, I fully believe in getting birds to voluntarily recall to me and step up voluntarily and go into their crate voluntarily. If I have a bunch of birds in a building and that building is on fire, I'm not going to be waiting for, okay, come on, do you want to step up for, no, I can rebuild a relationship after the fact, because at that point the safety need far exceeds that individual stress on that bird at that time. um, so I think that's always something you got to keep in mind. Like, what is the stress level here? If you have a bird that flies down to the ground and maybe you have a dog or a cat who could potentially go after that bird, instead of voluntary recall, like, no, the immediate concern is that potential predatory animal. So you always have to look in that situation. What is your safety risk there?
Absolutely, and I think too, when we're training, if we have the luxury of training prior to a situation happening, if we have that luxury, then we want to be careful not to build latency. You talked about that. Do you want to step up? Step up. Do you want voluntarily stepping up, voluntarily coming out of the cage, voluntarily going into a crate? If we build that latency by asking and asking and asking, then when that emergency happens, we've trained our animal that it's okay to take a little bit longer. We want to empower them and give them choice, but we also need to be careful that we're not training that latency. Um, so,
Right.
Chris says here, don't we have to train or retrain the human first? Um, in some cases, absolutely.
um, One thing I did just want to bring up in case anyone is brand new or they haven't seen before. So latency is that training idea of, it's the amount of time between when you cue a behavior and when the behavior is completed. So especially when you see newer trainers that do, okay, come here, come here, come here, come here. They're basically training the animal that you don't have to come here until the seventh time they hear that cue. The words don't necessarily mean anything to them, but hey, after seven times, it finally came over to you. You were excited. You gave it a treat. It's like, oh, that's what you want after seven times. So
Right.
a lot of times that's built in by the trainer.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's that, and you have to watch yourself. There's a trainer issue, and it's a matter of, um, not close that window of opportunity. Instead of asking 17 times because you know that they can do it. I mean, and you get, you're like, I know he can do this. I know he can do this. And you keep asking, and the bird's like, all right, I'll wait. Oh, oh, it's 10 minutes later and you're still asking me, and when I do step up, I'm still gonna get that reinforcer. Mm, it's not a good situation, but
Ooh, I have one I want to bring up, and you're going to like it because you're in this story.
I'm ready.
So on the idea of you need to be able to watch yourself, like we've done multiple live streams where we've talked about the idea of like recording yourself, getting somebody else to watch your training sessions because there might be something you're missing, something that isn't clicking for you. I want to point out that that never goes away. That is always going to be something that is helpful. You're always going to benefit from that. And the story I have that proves that, I called Robin and I was like, I'm going to put you on video phone. I need you to take a look at this because there's something not working. I was having to get a zebra onto a trailer. I I did not have to train it as like a voluntary. You go up and down from the trailer every single day. You put your halter on. Like this was at a facility where I did not want the zebra, and the owner got the zebra. And my rule was that the zebra had to be halter broken before I got it. And yeah, that zebra broke like 4 halters. And so I'm like, I called Robin and I'm like, help me out because I'm like missing something. And Robin's like, okay, well, what about this? And we just talked back and forth through it. It ended up being as simple as the zebra seems to be having a hard time with the step. Let's just put a little bit of angled dirt going up to the trailer. Zebra went right on the trailer. So that like 5 to 10 minute phone call, I was directly involved with it. I was stressed out. I was hot. I mean, it was Houston summer. And like Robin was able to provide an outside input and help me problem solve that. So always keep those people in your lives to help with that. That outside point of view can always help.
And and it does, it's a fresh set of eyes. We I've had people, call. That was one situation. I had another person ask me to come to their facility. They were working with an eagle that was flighted, and it was one trainer would cue a behavior, a flight behavior, and then but the bird was just standing and wouldn't, take the cue. And we figured out it was because she didn't have the bird's full attention. It was an outdoor show. There was a lot going on, but because she was in it, she didn't, she couldn't get past that point. And sometimes it's just a fresh set of eyes. And I think, with husbandry, a lot of times we're looking for a behavior that, it comes up. Maybe it's like syringe training that comes up, or you've got to do some wound care, or a vet wrap, and you may have time to train. You may know ahead of time. You may need to get blood work done. You may, you may have that opportunity. But sometimes it's stressful. If you know that, you're going to have to move an animal like the zebra, you're going to have to move an animal and it's not, you don't have a ton of time. You don't have a choice. There's some stress involved. And I think taking the opportunity to train behaviors ahead of time really makes life less stressful for you, better welfare for your animal. If you were going to create a list, Jack, of behaviors that, it would be nice to have them in your repertoire, what would they be?
So whenever I start with anyone new, the first one I always start with is recall. Because recall is basically going to be, can you get the animal interested in you? Can you get it to come up to you? And then it starts associating you with some sort of reinforcement. After recall, I would say target training is probably the most useful behavior that you can do with an animal. So presenting something that the animal knows to touch. Obviously, that will depend on the animal you are working with. If I am working with, I'm trying to think of what Quillamina, my female hedgehog. She will come up to a fingertip. Um, Now, if I was working with a macaw with a bite history, I probably wouldn't be going target because I have worked with parrots my entire professional life and still have all my fingers and would like to keep it that way. Um, But and then like working with something like an elephant, like what is this to the, granted the elephant would actually still target to a fingertip.
No, and I think, target is one of for safety, for, for safety, if you've got an animal that you need to move, um, if they're target trained, that's your best friend. Using some kind of target, and especially if it's in a stressful situation, if that bird is really, or animal is really well target trained and does, kind of, well, I don't like the word perfect, but repeatedly, completes that behavior. Do you, I mean, it helps with so many different situations. Yeah, stingray versus an elephant, definitely different target.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so two things based, and then let's see if I can remember them. One, uh, that perfect animal, that animal that always does everything you want every single time, it is going to have bad days. That is the
Mhm.
reality of training animals. You are going to have days where you are working on a behavior consistently every single day. Be like, oh, that behavior is so beautiful. That behavior is so beautiful. Then one day you come in, the animal's like, what are you asking for? I don't know what that is. I have never done that in my life. And you are going to want to step out into the other room and scream because you are losing your mind. But you're not. That's actually part of the learning process. And you actually made a very good call by wanting to step into the other room, and not, lash out.
Mhm.
Or I also work with cockatoos, so if I were to react like that, that would then be, oh no, this gets the best reaction. This is the best reinforcement. Make him lose his mind. So that's always got to be something you keep in the back of your mind when you are training. That there are going to be bad days. There are going to be days where the animal doesn't perform to the standard that you expect. There are going to be days where there's stressful things going on. Maybe it's a thunderstorm, a weather front coming through, maybe a power outage, a natural disaster. Maybe the animal can tell that you did not get your coffee that morning. And it's like, I don't want to come out there because you seem a little on edge.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, you're suddenly the scary thing. But I think you hit upon reinforcement in when you were talking about with a cockatoo. That's like big bonus jackpot reinforcement, and I think part of your training for husbandry, which it should be exciting to you because you're doing something that's positive and it's going to enhance your animal's welfare, but it's not the big like woohoo behavior. So you still have to be as aware of what's the most reinforcing when you're doing training for husbandry.
You do, and you have to be aware that the animal picks what's reinforcing. So maybe you need to play with that. So for one of my cockatoos, teaching it a new behavior, uh, I can offer food reinforcement. I know what his favorite treats are, but I also know that getting in front of people and seeing reaction from them is going to be one of the most reinforcing things. And if I can combine those, now he's getting the food reinforcer he likes plus all the attention. So it's like, hey, people, come over because I need to work on this behavior and I need people to see this and react to it because then he's going to have the time of his life. We're going to have a great training session. I remembered my second thing.
Yes.
I do. Uh, you know, and also, I'm going to apologize in advance because there's no way on God's green earth we're going to get done with this in an hour. Um, but no, the other thing is those first two behaviors we were covering, the recall training, the target training. Another really nice thing about them is that they can be protected contact training. So,
Mhm.
protected contact training versus free contact training. Usually, it's something you hear about with elephants, with large carnivores. But especially if you have a parrot who has maybe an unknown history, you don't know what it's been exposed to. If it has a bite history, being able to work with that bird inside its cage provides you a little more security in your well-being because you know the bird's not going to bite you, but it also provides the bird more security because it knows it's not going to get grabbed. Like, it has the ability to choose whether or not it's going to interact. And that's how you can really build that reinforcement history and that relationship to move on to the next steps.
And it is a matter of, and it well, it doesn't matter what animal you're working with. I remember presenting years and years ago, it was an outreach program at a big facility, and they were working with Amazon parrots, and they were also working with a wolf pack. And I had they didn't usually come together, the two groups of trainers, and the group working with the Amazon said, well, I would just, grab him and put him in the crate. And so I looked at the trainers that worked with the wolf pack and I said, so would you just grab your animal and put it in the crate? And they were like, no. And I said, well, okay, so why would you do that? The guys that work with the Amazons versus the wolves. What it shouldn't matter. It should be a matter of, you set a goal, you figure out where you need to go with this and what's realistic. I mean, and that's a whole nother discussion, is what's realistic. And, when you're deciding what you want to do and how you want to do it, you need to talk about, it's not just because you can, it's about, should you, and how do you do that in that best enhances welfare and is the least intrusive way to do it. And protected contact, I smiled when you said that, because I have a young lady that came to me years ago, and she didn't tell me what kind of bird she had, and we were going to do some online sessions, and she showed up with welding gloves, and she had, her ears were all wrapped up in bandages, and I went, okay. So in my head I went, wow, she's got like a cockatoo or a green wing, or no, she had a green cheek. But and I got to
See, and
give
my
her
first
credit.
thought was green cheek.
I gotta give her credit. She wanted to work with that bird, and she wanted it to be successful. And we got to the point where she's a good trainer, and she works with that bird, and she no longer has to wear the welding gloves. And but protected contact can work. I mean, sometimes you got to do it with a budgie. It's not about, everybody goes, oh, protected contact, that's elephants and tiger. No, it can be with anything, depending on what the situation is.
No, and I have seen some parrots that have been inadvertently trained, again, because the information wasn't available, because there were people who wanted to interact with an animal, they wanted to try to build a relationship. I have seen a Quaker parrot that was the meanest thing on earth I have ever seen, because they were told, no, 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 just if the bird's not acting right, if it's not listening to you, just make it step up for you. So that bird was gradually trained that, like, oh, it's showing you improper body language and you still force it to step up. And then it goes and it lightly bites you and you still force it to step up. Now it's like really biting you and you force it to step up. Finally, the bird flies across the room at you, like wings out, like beak agape, and that's when you finally leave it alone. The bird has learned that's what it takes for you to
Mhm.
not force it to step up. And it's possible to work through that, but it can take a lot of work. Like, it took a lot of work with that bird just to get to the point where it would be calm in its cage as I walked by it. And that's not, the bird wasn't necessarily, not in the classical sense, being abused or anything. It was an owner that was doing the best they thought. They really just wanted to have a meaningful relationship with this bird, and it just wasn't working.
No, and I think too, there's a lot of misinformation that happens, and people get, they get this misinformation, and then they go headlong into, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna train this animal. And I think, looking at training for husbandry and even trick training, you have to go into it and start small. start with, you know, people go, oh, well, I'm not really training this animal because it's just all it does is it moves down the perch towards where I am. That's huge for some birds, right? Some animals, the coming closer. And I think that's you have to look at what's your goal? How do you get to your goal? You don't just jump from I've got this brand new bird and tomorrow or next week maybe he's going to be, doing voluntary blood draws. That's not how that goes.
Right. But, and like you kind of hit on one of the ideas I bring up a lot is every interaction with an animal is a training session, whether or not you take advantage of it. So things are going to happen and you are going to react a certain way. So there are going to be consequences one way or the other. If the training session is you tried to force the bird to step up and the bird bit you, so you leave the bird alone, you have now trained a bird that it biting you is what it takes for you to leave it alone. Most people would say, no, that wasn't a training session. Like the bird bit me and everything went wrong. I'm like, no, no, no. There was information was passed, and that is going to shape future interactions. So I think thinking of it that way and coming up with a plan in place for every interaction you do with a bird, think of it like a training session. Like, what do I want to happen here? And then evaluate it afterward. Like, what happened here? And that's going to
Mhm.
help you have a little more success.
Well, and I think, I don't want to liken them to children because that's not the case. But maybe like in the back of your head, think about it as that toddler that when you say the F word in front of the toddler, and suddenly now the toddler has that in their vocabulary. And so you probably you're a little more careful, maybe, unless that's your goal. You're a little more careful around the toddler with your language. So you just need to be a little bit more aware when you're interacting with your animal that you're not inadvertently training things that you don't want, or the
And
F word, because
you know what?
you can
Oh,
change it
you're
to
good.
duck.
I've always heard it changed to cluck for the parrot that sings "Old MacDonald Had a Farm." Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I've seen a double yellow-headed Amazon who did it as a not particularly convincing cluck cluck here. Um,
Right.
no, you know, I my umbrella cockatoo that I do a lot of programs with, Grayson, we've seen him a lot. We have some videos we're going to show of him in just a little bit. He is probably one of the favorite animals that I have ever worked with. He is an excellent bird. He is engaged. He is excited to learn new behaviors. He's excited to do them. He is a genuinely good bird and also a menace to society. Like, sometimes animals might learn something bad. I do not use profanity around Grayson because he would pick that up. And the first time that he said a bad word and 200 kids lost their mind, game over. That's all he is saying ever again.
I gotta say, having met Grayson would use it appropriately, though.
Well, and that's the thing when you have kids that learn bad words, right? Then you start to have to you evaluate it, and it's like, okay, I didn't want them to learn that, but at least they used it in context, so they learned it appropriately. Um, as a trainer, there are going to be times where you're working on a behavior and, oh, hey, it's not going right. Oh, hey, I hit a stumbling block. Oh, we need to go back to the beginning because everything just fell apart. And that happens. So don't let stumbling blocks, don't let messing up your plan stop you from wanting to train that animal, because I guarantee putting the effort in, working with the training, working with building that relationship, at the end of the day, even if you have things you have to redo, things that you need to fix, it's still going to be better than if you didn't.
And we talk a lot about having a plan. You got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. You hear that, and when you're learning to be, about training, everybody tells you have a plan. Your plan's got to be flexible because that plan will go astray. There will be, a situation where you go, okay, that wasn't what I thought was going to happen, and maybe you go with it. Uh, Frank can't bring his bird to outreaches. Yeah, and it does happen. I have to say I'm not super surprised about that, Frank, but um, so but you do have to be willing to change that up. So if you're looking at small approximations, you're looking at, I've got my plan. These are the approximations I'm gonna. And do you want to explain the definition of approximation, Jack?
I mean, I guess I
No.
can do a little bit. That's a good joke. That's a good joke. You know it. Approximations are just the small steps that make up a finished behavior. You never want to think of, hey, I'm going to teach my bird how to play chess. You could. I could teach Grayson to play chess, but then I'm probably going to have to lose at chess every night for the rest of my life. But I don't just start there. I would start with, he approaches the chess pieces. Maybe he touches a chess piece. He picks up a chess piece. Now he sets down a chess piece. And then building that more and more and more. But it's starting at the very beginning in those little steps. You've got to walk before you can run. You've got to stand before you can walk. So what are the steps that putting all that together?
And I think, part of that is observation as well. So if you're working on these foundational behaviors with your birds that will lead to positive welfare, positive aspects, with your husbandry, you're going to want to let the bird dictate what those approximations look like. So, if the bird's jumping from A to D, or okay, good example, when you're working with corvids, right? I'm sorry, but with a corvid, you can do your plan and you go, okay, this is an A to B. Well, by the time you are reinforcing for B, 9 times out of 10, the corvid has gone to C, D, and E. And just has blown you out of the water way ahead of what you wanted, but somehow managed to figure out what your goal was going to be in the end. And it's just something you have to be able to get used to. You've got, Chris was talking about Quakers having very distinctive body language. And in my opinion, if you're aware of an animal's body language, half the battle is won right there. It's, it gets you where you want to be quicker. But if an animal is jumping ahead of your plan, that's okay. It's okay to take those approximations and tailor it to the situation that you're working with.
Yeah. I would also say on the flip side, if you go into your training session, and this is always, even if you just sit there and think to yourself, but especially if you're working with somebody else, talk it through with them. Be like, hey, what I want to do in this is I want to get the bird to go to its station, open the door, step up, come out to this training stand. We're going to work on wave. We're going to work on wings up. Um, Again, wave and wings up are often seen as trick behaviors, but wings up lets me fully see how the bird's wings are moving, lets me see the presentation of them, see their feathers, especially if you have a bird that's older with arthritis, potentially pododermatitis or bumblefoot. A wave is a really good way to check their feet to see how they're doing. But the training session is not going well. The bird is not in the best mood. Things are not happening. Again, that perfect bird is having a rough day. Like, it is also okay to say, hey, you know what? I don't want to try to do everything that I had originally planned. I had a plan, and the plan was important, but I think I need to get like one good behavior and then call it, because this is not going well.
And I think there are several points there that you brought up. Always end on a positive so that it's, because that way you want to make it this is something you want the animal to be willing to engage in again. Um, and then it's not meeting those approximations, taking a step back is just building better reinforcement history. It's the animal is learning, okay, if I do what's requested, if I follow through, then I get, if I do what I'm supposed to do, I get, or what's asked of me, I get reinforced. So they learn how that works, how the system, so it's the system, they learn how to work the system. And then, okay, so it's still a positive situation.
Right. And that learning how to pay attention to ending on the positive note, always thinking about what is something that you can get an animal to do in that moment where you are able to offer reinforcement is going to go a long way in helping you develop as a trainer. Working with exotic hoof stock to teach them to do voluntary hoof trims. I've had to train a lot of newer keepers on how to do that. And when you want an animal to present their foot, but the animal is more in tune with the training than the keeper is, the animal's already done that before the keeper's even cued it. So I'm like, okay, well, what can you do now? Because you can't cue the behavior if the animal's already doing it, but you can either cue this behavior or you could release that behavior. Like, there's always multiple steps that you can do. It's like a pick your own adventure book. You just have to
Mhm.
think of what is the next page that I could go to.
And I think don't become so firmly entrenched in your plan and the steps that you get stuck, because, well, no, well, let me see, it says I'm supposed to da 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 da, and I'm supposed to do this next and then this next, and then you're tripping over yourself, the animal isn't getting a clear request from you, and so that's when those kind of funky behaviors happen that you didn't really want. So
You plan out your session, you run the session, and you make those accommodations in the moment. But
mhm.
then a very, very important part has to be evaluating how the session went, because maybe you did try to ask for too much and you need to plan for less the next session that you do, or maybe you weren't moving fast enough. Um, even if it's just you, think to yourself: was I happy with how that session went? Was I happy with the safety of that session? Did I accomplish the goals that I set out to accomplish? But if there's multiple people working on it, have it as a conversation. And this is a big one. It is not a, well, that didn't work because you're a bad trainer. Instead, focus on, oh, hey, it seemed like a couple of times the animal was performing the behavior, but you weren't bridging and offering reinforcement. Is that because you have a higher behavioral criteria? Sorry. Do you have a higher behavioral criteria for that behavior? So you want to see, more, the animal hold that behavior longer, or maybe if it's wings up,
Mhm.
do the wings have to be opened even wider? And have that conversation. If it becomes blaming, it doesn't go anywhere positive. It can be a very, very ugly thing. But if it's a productive conversation of like, hey, that's a little bit different than how I'm doing it, like, maybe should we both be doing it this way or maybe this way? What are the benefits that you're seeing? That's always a great way to follow up to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and just be realistic about it. Like, there have been times where I've done training sessions where I'm like, okay, that did not go the way that I planned, and I wouldn't even say that I was super happy with the session. Oh, perfect example. One of the reptile keepers that I was working with, we had to catch up a dwarf caiman. So jump it, tape it, do all the things. At the end of it, he was very, very critical. He's like, "Oh, I could have done this a little bit sooner, and I could have done this a little bit better, and I could have done." And I'm like, "Okay," and it's great that you're thinking of those things, but I got to ask you. We wanted to grab the animal, get its weight, get it handled. Were we able to accomplish that? He goes, yes. I'm like, did we do so in a way that was safe for the animal? goes, yes. I'm like, great. Did we do so in a way that was safe for all of the people? Like, do you still have all your fingers? He goes, yes. And I'm like, then as far as I am concerned, that training session was successful. We have areas that we can work on to make it even better, but it wasn't a bad training session. It accomplished our goal and it was safe. So be realistic with your evaluation.
So we have a question. Jane's got surgery coming up in a couple of weeks, and she had a plan, and the plan is out the window because her 19-year-old Gala has decided they want nothing to do with the only person in the household that can usually handle her. Okay, so um, this is a big. This is not insurmountable, Jane. It's absolutely not. I think, well, let me tell you my suggestion, and then we'll see what Jack has to say too. My suggestion is up the reinforcement from that coming from that person. Do behaviors that Jack the Galah has had down pat. If you can resurrect some of those, getting the person that you need to interact with him to be able to reinforce more often, do that. You can even do the person becomes the treat dispenser. You don't want to reinforce negative behavior or behavior that you don't want, but walk by and drop something in the bowl. Oh, hey, here you go. Oh, well, now that person's not so bad. I might want to have something to do with that person. And as far as handling it, that's so. How much handling needs to happen would be the question that I am asking, because if it's you're going to be laid up for months and months and months and nobody's going to handle the bird, okay, this is an issue and we need to do something about it. If it's a short period of time and you can interact through protected contact, then that's what I would suggest. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I think, yes, agree with those aspects. One thing that I've seen that sometimes people forget or they don't even think about, always think about what behaviors your bird can do that are worthy of reinforcement. And that's going to be anything you ask for. So even something as simple as a step up. Like I've seen so many people, they, step up, step down into the cage, onto the stand, onto my hand. Like that's still a behavior. That is an ask for the bird. Sometimes that's a pretty big ask if they are not comfortable with that person, they're not comfortable with that environment. And it almost becomes like that's not even a trained behavior. That's just an expectation to then work on other behaviors. But that's something that the bird can do to merit reinforcement. Again, going back to the idea of protected contact, one of the things you realize working with animals is rehearsing a behavior in terms of an animal. Rehearsing is basically the more an animal is able to practice a behavior, the more likely they are to perform that behavior. And that is going to include anything an animal is capable of doing. So if the bird is lunging at you, if the bird is biting, those are all potential behaviors that animal could be rehearsing. If you work protected contact, the bird can't bite you, so it's not rehearsing or practicing that behavior. So it's going to be less likely to be seen in the future. And then that's also when you're looking at the idea of like how much handling is involved, also what kind of handling is involved. And birds can have very particular guidelines, but you can still work on things different ways. Maybe the bird doesn't want to step up for this caretaker onto their hand. For a lot of birds, hands can be scary, but maybe they'll step up for like a forearm. A forearm isn't going to grab you. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll have the bird step up on their hand. They'll hold down the toes with this thumb. And even like well-trained, well-socialized birds can be wary of hands because it grabs me so I can't fly away. So even stepping up to a forearm can make a difference. Something like stick training, having a bird trained to step up onto a perch. Again, it's not a hand, it's not as scary. And for the person that's having to do it, if the bird bites the perch, it's not going to draw blood. So that's a little bit safer for both people involved. Going back to that idea of targeting, maybe it needs to be that the bird targets across the cage or across a play stand, and you're still interacting with that bird. It's still being socialized, but you've taken out that bite risk. You've taken out that safety risk for both that caretaker and the bird.
Mhm. If and Jane, if the bird is flighted, and you can some that person could target that, because Yvonne said, "Can the person bring the bird to Jane?" Um, she's lunging and being a big pink angry floof bird. Oh, we don't want a big pink angry floof bird. That's a scientific definition, isn't it, Jane? Jack, I'm sure you've heard the big pink angry floof bird definition. I know I have, and I've seen it actually. So okay, so if it's not going to be an extended period of time, Jane, I would suggest doing some protected contact. Yeah, because that's, I mean, and if that goes well, and then, the bird decides, oh, okay, this person isn't so bad, right? I will deal with this person because they are the bringer of all that is good and yummy. Then, okay, it might, doing protected contact, having success with protected contact may lead to more willingness to perform the next step, the next further behavior.
Behavior that you can get out of a bird that you are able to reinforce, it helps every other behavior that you do. Your bird has more of a reinforcement history. It has more of a relationship with you. Um, the more behaviors you work on, the more the bird knows, oh, this person's going to ask me to do some maybe weird things. And it's fine. It is safe. Like Grayson does flips. And that is now one of his favorite things to do. He loves to do them surrounded by people. He loves like 300 people. For all intents and purposes, this prey animal should say, "No, I don't necessarily trust this. There's a bunch of things going on. I don't want to be on my back, not able to see what's going on." No, he does flips and he loves them. But part of that is he does so many other behaviors. And some of them are not as exciting. I can hold out a finger and he shakes my finger with his little foot, and it's adorable. Again, is that a husbandry behavior? I can hold it. I can get a good look at his nails. I can see the grip strength of his foot. But it's also a presentation behavior because I tell the audience, wait a minute, we're working right now. He is a very professional bird, so I need him to be a little bit more professional. Grayson, can you shake hands? And then he shakes hands, and then everybody loses their mind because they're like, oh my God, look at the business savvy on this parrot. This is ridiculous. Again, you can double dip there. Training and husbandry behaviors, performance behaviors, or show behaviors. I will say I hate the terminology of trick behaviors. And the only reason is I feel like it diminishes the work that goes into the training. Like, oh, that's just a trick. Be like, no. They're all involved behaviors. They all utilize positive reinforcement. We set the animal up to where it wants to succeed. It wants to participate, and it's useful in differing ways. So but if you call your birds tricks, hey, if that's what helps you build that relationship, have that work history, go for it.
Yeah, I agree as far as that's concerned. All right, so you've got a couple weeks, Jane. So we'll look for that update. But so okay, we've now talked for almost an hour, and we
Yeah,
didn't
but we
get
already
through.
said it was going to go over.
We did, you, or do you want to come back? Not next week, but the week after.
We could do either.
Because I do want, I want to get into a little bit more about some of the specific behaviors that you can use for husbandry,
Okay.
and get people, able to. We're not going to show you how to, we'll do some demonstration and talk about the technique. if that works for you, Jack. We had talked about doing a couple other dates anyway. Um, and if that, because I don't want to leave people hanging. We got into some foundational stuff. We got into some technical stuff, but I'd rather next time talk about what does this look like? How do we make that work?
Okay. I would say so that people know what to expect, and then I know we have a couple of video clips, and Nick has his technical wizardry that he can do. So I wonder if it's possible to be like, can we have like some of the video clips just muted, but like going, because some of them are really short, and we can just talk about what's going to come up with those and the things to pay attention to. But again, for all of them, the understanding of like, why are you training and how are you training? Are you paying attention to what is the ideal reinforcer for the animal? Did you have a training plan before you went into this? Did you evaluate your training session after it was done? Like, that's going to be important for every single thing that you are training.
An evaluation is so important because you need to be honest with yourself and with your animal. Because honest. And what are we doing here, Jack? You're squishing birds. What's up with that?
Actually, that is what we call it. It's a game called Squish the Bird. And so we start with, this is the start of voluntary towel training, and it's really fun. This was part of that Feather Touch aviculture session, and it was like, okay, I need this video clip within a week, and I need the bird to showcase every approximation. So we started with, getting used to hands, then getting used to the towel, then willingly walking into the towel. Then, eventually the bird is wrapped up in a towel. If you brought that bird to a vet clinic and it did that, like, I guarantee you one vet tech, probably with, 3 Band-Aids on each hand, would cry.
It's true. It's definitely true. And I think, something so that looks like, oh, hey, that's simple, right? There's a lot
Mhm.
that goes into that. So it does get cold in Texas. We can show the next one.
I know. Look at it. I had like a lightweight hoodie and a hat. It was burr. um, but no, because we did quick little video clips just to talk about a variety of the different behaviors we've already talked about. So station training, scale training, crate training. Um, Again, all of those are going to be really, really good foundation behaviors. Step up and step down, and things to keep in mind. Like maybe your bird doesn't step up onto a hand, it steps up onto your forearm, it steps up onto a perch. Maybe your bird doesn't want to step up forward, it wants to step backward. Um, Birds are individuals, they do have individual preferences. A lot of them do have histories that we don't fully know. So, maybe your bird was trained a certain way, and that's what it's used to. And yeah, I really do talk a lot with my hands.
You do. And I think scale training and station training can be one and the same. And I think too, with station training, sometimes in an emergency situation, if you've got a bird that will station, it can get them either out of a bad situation. If you can ask them to go to a station, it can get them out of a bad situation in some cases. And it can also keep you safe. If you've got a bird that is now, lunging or biting, and you can get them to station and they will actually go, um, because they have that history down. And it's not just, oh, it's just stationing. No, it can be very, very important.
Yeah. And again, they all feed on each other. You build that reinforcement history. I feel like there are certain things we keep coming back to. We keep repeating the idea of, record your training sessions so you can assess them. The but that idea, the all of your training benefits all of your other training. Like, it is so important. So even if your bird is just doing come up to a certain perch when you ask it to, maybe it picks up a foot just inside of its cage. you are still going to be on the path to get it to do all of the other things if you are willing to put that work in.
Yeah, and you can use these different behavior. Oh, this one's a good one. You want to talk about this one while it's up?
Yeah, this one is so that is Beaker and Bunsen. Seemed appropriate names for two emu. One of them wrapped one of its feathers, which, if you're not aware, emus have very wiry bifurcated feathers. So there's like two feathers off of each shaft. It wrapped it around a toe, so we got that off. But then the vet wanted it to get 2 weeks of daily foot soaks, and everyone else was like, how are you going to do that? Like, you the emu is going to lose its mind if you try to hold it in water for 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, we're doing this voluntarily. So we worked on desensitizing the pool. We worked on getting the birds very used to it, using their food, actually chopped the food up in a way that it was smaller so the birds took a little bit longer. But here you can see they willingly step up to that pool in an Epsom soak, and both feet are, and we just did both birds because it was actually easier. They were more stressed if I tried to separate them, and an Epsom soak wasn't going to hurt the other bird, so why not? That was a modification to the plan we had to make, but now both birds, voluntary foot soak, this was maybe 6 to 8 training, and we did a couple of training sessions a day. They were maybe 5 to 10 minutes max. So within about 3 days, voluntary foot soaks were happening.
Mhm. And and it's I you can build on things. So if that turned into they needed something else that was topical, you could work with the same, just it's like transferable skills, right? You take when you're training, you train a basic behavior. Like target is my favorite, station is my next favorite because you can use station for weight to get weights on a bird. You can use station if you've got a bird that maybe doesn't want to come out of the cage, right? So if you have a perch on the door that you open, they're going to come out to that perch if that's their station spot. If you've got a bird that is engaging in that lunging behavior, maybe you can get them to station further away. So it's not really an effective behavior. There's no reinforcement in the lunge for the bird. So these kind of behaviors, you just got to get creative with them. How do I take what they already know, what I've already trained? They've got reinforcement history with this behavior. How do I make that work for me to make life better for that animal?
Yeah, and
So,
a lot of behaviors break down to very, very similar parts. I recently went to a zoo. I went with some other people, and we were talking about how they train some of the different behaviors. So one of them was painting animals, picking up a paintbrush, painting on the canvas for a keeper. Another one was in a show. It was sea lions getting discarded water bottles or things that the keepers would, to show, here's how you pick that up and here's how you recycle, because recycling is important. And those are the same building blocks for those behaviors. The object retrieval, the target training, potentially station training. If you have those components, you can build either of those behaviors. You can build so many other behaviors, but those are all going to be the same steps. So, like when we think about that emu foot soak video, if your bird is trained to go to a particular station, maybe it goes to a little foam disc. If you had that foam disc at the bottom of that pool, now it's going to be a lot easier to train the emu to go in there. The emus were actually target trained, so that was one of the first steps to desensitize the pool and get them used to it, was targeting, getting closer and closer to it. Then once the pool wasn't scary, then it was no problem, because anyone who's ever worked with emu knows that they're a lot of fun to work with. They are not the brightest animals. They are very curious, but they can be scared or stupid. So you just gotta get over that hurdle, and then they usually want to do things. Everything's fine until it's not, and then it's scary.
so So Nick's giving us the subtle hint that people want to watch Artemis Land instead of us, which I understand
Oh,
and I do appreciate that. So we're going to let people go, and we we but we will be back, and we'll talk about some of these things in a little bit more depth. And I want to thank you, Jack. As always, it's a pleasure to have you. And we will definitely be doing some more in the near future.
all right. I look forward to seeing you for part 2.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.